Welcome back, everybody. Trust the board. It is Joey and Ryan with you, as always, from SB Nation's Behind the Steel Curtain. Ryan, how are we feeling today? Less than, I guess, from the time you're seeing this, less than 2 weeks until the NFL draft in Pittsburgh. I'm hyped up. I'm ready to go. We're
I'm
so
hyped up.
close.
I'm hopped up on cold medicine. That's why we missed last week. Was a little under the weather. Turns out grinding and also having a day job really does a number on your immune system. But we're back at it. We're full throated again, and we're ready to finally get to the NFL draft. We still got 2 weeks, as like you said. By the time this comes out, maybe it's a week and a half. Who knows? But we got so much to talk about, and yet it just never stops. And
It
so
never
I'm ready to dive
stops.
in.
So I guess what we'll start with today is everybody knows that Fernando Mendoza is all but a lock to go to the Raiders first overall. Doesn't matter what happens. I mean, they're going to pick him first overall. Point is, but beyond that,
Not in Dan
from the
Orlovsky's America.
from maybe they go Ty Simpson. But in all seriousness, from like the Jets on, I have no idea what anybody's going to do. We know that this draft has been, I guess we can call it weaker because there's not a solidified number 2 pick. There's not a solidified number 3 pick. It feels like there's a lot of really talented guys up top. It's just a matter of where they go. There's a lot of really talented guys that are going to go in the first round. I just don't know where they're all going to go. It feels like this is going to be a weird draft where a lot of teams are going to be willing to take players at positions that they don't necessarily view as like huge needs for them at the current moment in time. I don't know. What do you think of this draft in general at the top 10 specifically for right now, as far as like what the hell is going to happen, even with the Jets at 2?
I mean, I think you nailed it right on the head. I mean, every year it feels like we say some version of, well, it's really going to reach a certain point, and then it's just going to be choose your flavor, what your team really needs. And like, yes, that's common draft speak. That's true with every year. However, in some classes, it feels like there are certain premium position players where, because of the talent level and because of the positions they play, you absolutely have to have them at a certain value. And so we talk about teams trading back if they don't need those positions. We talk about, you know, teams that are just so happy to have landed where they landed because they're in the perfect spot for exactly what they need. This year, we've said it a million times, and it's that there is a lot of talent, but it isn't necessarily all just so clearly defined with those premium positions, and the premium positions that are near the top of the board, it just feels like there isn't those well-rounded guys that are can't miss plug into any system. It feels like they're really hyper focused. Like, a team that's going to need like a Ruben Bain, if we're talking about guys that are near the top, is probably going to be different than a team that's like David Bailey's our guy. You know what I mean? They're just different
Yeah.
styles of players. They achieve similar things in terms of what their roles might be in terms of like their pass rushers. But, David Bailey, he's probably going to be a team that wants him to be a little more wide nine, stand up at times, maybe occasionally drop back, be a designated pass rusher. You're not necessarily needing him to be your firm run defense edge center. Whereas Ruben Bain, we'll go on and on and on about his arms. I think he's the most talented player in this draft, regardless. And I'm seeing him now, people legitimately talking about him falling out of the top 10, which is crazy to me. It
It's
feels like
wild.
maybe that's just a narrative that's happening because we're getting close to the draft, and there are plenty of teams that want him in the top 10. And so they're, feeding the media narrative to try to see if it'll make someone drop. You always have to be conscious of those narratives when these last 2 weeks, because draft season's always lying season, but it always feels like the last 2 weeks are supreme lying season. But that said, when you look at the teams in the top 10, some of them are teams that, like the Chiefs, where you don't really expect them to be here very often. And so you wonder what they could do. Are they thinking they need to help out Patrick Mahomes and further boost the offense for their franchise quarterback who's had to carry a bunch of load the last few years? Or do they want to replace a lot of the defensive players that they've lost? You look at a team like the Saints, where it feels like they're on the cusp of turning the page. They could go either offense or defense. Do they want to rebolster their secondary? Do they want a pass rusher? Do they want to get a weapon for their young quarterback? They could go a lot of different ways. The Jets are the Jets. They could pretty much improve everywhere except maybe offensive line. They do maybe need a guard, but they're not going to do that at 2. That would be for later in the draft. So there's just a lot of questions. And it's just a weird, weird draft. You get guys like Caleb Downs, who it's like, how much do you value a safety where he supposedly ranks in terms of total talent in the draft class? It's confusing. And you throw in teams like the Browns where they seem like an ultimate wild card and they're picking 6 and they're picking late in the first. If you've got a good read on it, then like give me your picks and let's go to Vegas because I think, it's truly a head scratcher this year.
Yeah. So Dane Brugler's The Beast. We'll reference this a
Mm,
little bit later in the episode, but
mm,
Ruben Bain, one of the things that stuck out to me, number 9 prospect on his
sure,
board. I
sure.
think on our behind the steel curtain top 150, he is number 1
Mhm.
on the board. So
Mostly because I tanked
interesting.
Fernando Mendoza a little bit, and I love Mendoza, but, he was number 1. I think you and Rylan had him at number 2. I had him at number 1. And Mendoza, I think I had at number 6 while you both had him at 1. And that's not because I don't think Fernando Mendoza isn't worthy of the number 1 overall pick. I just feel like he isn't the same tier of number 1 overall quarterback prospect that we're used to.
Yeah.
I still think he's a top 10 worthy pick. He's still a top 5 worthy pick. If I was the Raiders, I would take him. But I did want to reflect that I do think there are some players that I think are just much more talented at premium positions. Uh, so we dropped him to 2, I think, with how our math
Yeah.
worked out. But there's always going to be different opinions, and Dane Brugler is like one of the standards in the draft community. So I'm sure he has his reasons, and he's really well plugged in. So I'm sure he's got a lot of great feedback too. I just see Ruben Bain as a guy who wrecks opposing offenses at will, and I just maybe he'll fall a little bit in that regard once he gets to the pro level because, I mean, he was a man amongst boys in college, but I just think he's so wildly talented that for me, he's still the number 1 guy in this draft, and if he falls out of the top 10 or if, God forbid, you all let him fall to Kansas City,
That's what I was just gonna say. Like Kansas City being at number 9, like I know it's unfair. It feels so unfair because it's a weird draft where we don't know who's gonna go where. But like I feel like no matter who Kansas City gets at 9, I'm just gonna think like, fuck, how did we let that happen?
Mhm,
How did the league let that
mhm.
happen? I don't know who it's gonna be, but I'm telling you, no matter what, it doesn't really matter who it is. If it's Caleb Downs, if Ruben Bain somehow makes it to 9 and they get him, I mean, God, dude. Like, what are we even doing?
Throw him in there. The league let them get Norman Lott last year, and he didn't do much as a rookie, but I think he's going to be a guy who takes a year or 2 leap as a guy who's probably going to be a situational pass rusher. I just think if you let Casey add to their defensive line, oh man, they're going to be right back real quick.
Yeah, yeah,
Another
it's
one
gonna be
another
like
one
that.
that I think is real interesting, and while we're talking about those top picks and teams that could do confounding things, where are you at with the Jeremiah Love talk and him going at 4 or 5 seem to be or 4 I guess the 3 most popular landing spots are Tennessee at 4, New York at 5, which I just think would be crazy considering they went through the Saquon
I think
thing
it'd be
not that long
wild.
ago, or in Washington, I've heard is another popular one. So what do you think about running back value and when it comes to top 10 picks?
I feel like it has to be Jeremiah Love to the Titans at 4. There was a
Has
podcast
to
Dane
be.
Brugler was on. It just it makes too much sense. He was even like, I don't think they're going to be the Ruben Bain team. And like this was before the Beast came out, so we know that he's probably a little bit lower on Ruben Bain than consensus. And I say consensus, like whatever we're thinking. I think he's a little bit lower than most. I think it's got to be Jeremiah Love at 4 to the Titans. I think they're looking to make a swing because, again, the Titans, they spent a lot of money in free agency. The one position they didn't really address, I guess, is running back. They've got Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. I don't need to see that for the 3rd year in a row be the 30th best rushing attack in the National Football League. I think Jeremiah Love, pair him with Cam Ward. You got Wandale Robinson on the outside, I guess is going to be their one uh, or something like that. I don't know how that's going to work,
I
but
don't know.
it
That's
has to be
wild to me.
Jeremiah Love at 4.
That's
That
wild to
one,
me.
I'm the most confident in after Mendoza. Because if the Jets went David Bailey, wouldn't shock me. If they went Ruben Bain wouldn't shock me. If they went Reese, wouldn't shock me. I feel like the one I'm most confident in after Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders is Jeremiah Love to the Titans at 4.
I just can't get behind it. I mean, I know the arguments people are making. Got to get your young quarterback a playmaker. Well, that's not what running back does. Like even if you're a great running back, that's not the help you think it's going to be, especially since they don't have any outside threats. Okay, so they're still going to condense on you. They're still going to have like 8, 9 guys in the box. They're still going to be giving you hell up front. Your running back isn't going to open that up. And he's not Christian McCaffrey, guys. Like he's really talented. Don't get me wrong. Jeremiah Love is a lot of fun to watch. He's not going to walk in and be Christian McCaffrey, like I've heard some people say. He's not on the same level of route running. I don't think you can't line him up in the slot in the same way that you could Christian McCaffrey or throw it to him in the flat and expect him to always make people miss. Like I just don't. He's good. He's not on that level for me. I would if I was a Titans fan and I don't envy them because I don't really love taking any of the receivers at 4 here, but if I was a Titans fan, I would much rather reach for Carnell Tate at number 4 than I would try to make a running back be our top 4 pick that we justify. Like, even just in terms of and I know this was a hotly debated thing, and a lot of the internet's worst people were out with pitchforks to go after Mina Kimes this week after she once again had to wear the armor for all of us running back value people. But like it doesn't make sense to me. It's not gonna the I think of running back as like if you're building an offense, and the metaphor I'm gonna use is like a Sunday or you're like some froyo. Like a running back is your topping, your last one. It's your cherry on top. It's not your base, and it's certainly not any kind of sauce or fruit you want to add that's like more hearty. It's your little cherry topper. It's elite running backs are sick. Elite running backs don't turn bad teams into good teams. It's just not how it happens. It maybe back in the day when every team was committed to running the ball 30 times and there were rules that let you beat up wide receivers, so you just needed to get those tough yards running no matter what. But there's enough data about how it doesn't really improve play action based on quality of running back. So the people arguing that it helps there, I'm sorry, the data says no. I don't see it. But I don't envy the Titans because like if you're saying they don't need a pass rusher as bad as someone on offense, I agree. That could be it could be a trade back. If I was Tennessee, I'm trying as hard as possible to trade back.
At what point though? Where are you trying to trade back? Are you trying to get back to like I don't know, just a couple spots back? Maybe
If
you're
you can
giving
stay
it
in the
up
top
to
10, if you can convince a team in the top 10 to move up for somebody that they love, obviously that's ideal. I would say I wouldn't want to trade back farther than like 15. I would probably try to stay in like the early teens or preteens. But, I'm not saying like, oh my God, Tennessee trade out of the first. Like, I'm not saying that. But I am saying if you can go into those teens where maybe you get a Cardinal Tate or maybe you get a Makai Lemon, a Jordan Tyson, or Kenyon Sadiq, maybe like, whatever offensive playmaker you want to get there. I don't know if they're going for tackle. It feels like they've paid for a tackle and they drafted the tackle highly. So that position's probably out. Their cornerbacks are pretty weak, so maybe they want to trade back into prime cornerback range. I could see that also being an option for them. But I also saw a report coming out today from I can't remember if it was Jordan Schultz or somebody like that. So somebody that I would put on the like not my like their word is gospel, but they tend to be right about 75% of the time. So there might be something to it where they were saying that there's a lot of talk that this is going to be a very trade heavy first round.
I did see that,
And
yes.
I could see it too. I could honestly see it too. And that a lot of teams are going to want to be trading up in the early second and third because the talent level kind of drops off a lot on day 3, which I think is true most years, but especially seems true this year at a lot of the positions that you would want to pay a premium for. So I could see that happening. And if you're a team like Tennessee, where it's like you need to just add everywhere and you maybe don't want to guess wrong with such a high pick at number 4, I could see that being the trade back. But that's all I have to say about Jeremiah 11-4. I know there's a lot of other things we want to jump into, but I just had to see what your opinion was on that.
I feel like it makes sense. I know what you're saying with like a running back value doesn't turn bad teams into good teams. It's all true.
I hate it for Washington too, for what it's worth.
I was gonna say like, oh, what if Washington's like, hey, we'll trade up to 4? Then I don't I guess it's I don't like it for Washington. I guess
I don't
if they
either.
have to pay up and
I
move up
don't
to 4,
I don't either,
I'm
but
not a
I
fan of
think that
that.
does kind of transition us into another team who, at least early on, was getting Jeremiah Love uh, connections and maybe hasn't recently. But with the news of Francis Manoa maybe having some strange back issues, asymptomatic back injury, uh,
Yeah, he's
Cardinals at
going
3 is also a puzzling situation now.
yeah, that throws more question marks into what could already be we don't know what's happening inside the top 5. It sounds like you said he's not really having symptoms. It's just kind of something that flared up and you noticed it and he's going to get some additional testing on it. And every report, that anybody put out was this is not expected to affect his draft stock. Of course it's not. Of course the agent's going to text you that. I don't think it affects it that much. I think now if the Cardinals for some reason pass on him, if they want to go edge rusher, if they want to go who knows whatever, yeah, he's going to go top 5. I'd be shocked if he made it out of the top 5.
Yeah,
He's the first tackle off the board.
not
Little
to
back injury doesn't
not to read
change
it,
that.
folks, because I'm sure that's thrilling. But just to Ian Rappaport, this was his exact tweet. He tweeted it out today. Miami offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa, potentially the top tackle in the draft, has decided to be at combine rechecks on Friday. I don't know what combine rechecks is. First I've ever heard of it. For additional imaging on a minor back issue that caused him some discomfort late in the season, sources say. I know it started 42 straight games. He starts hitting you with the bona fides, including 16
Yep.
this season, yada, yada. Not considered a candidate for immediate surgery. Did perform fully at his pro day. Currently is symptom free, but some teams have asked for additional testing on a disc issue. Nothing to hide. Mauigoa heads to Indy because you got to put a little
Nothing to
flare on your head.
hide
Yeah, you got to put a little
except for
flare
the
on.
back issue that we're
As
discovering
for
2
the
weeks
back
before the
issue,
draft.
yeah, exactly, and it's like, I don't know, these are always like they always get your eyebrows raising because you're like, it seems strange. Like, how did this come up? Why are we just now hearing about this? The combine was like about a month ago. So if medicals were flaring up then, I'm surprised we're only just now hearing about it. You always wonder, is this teams trying to make a player drop because they want him? Or is this a team that's being heavily mocked a player that they don't want, trying to, I don't know. It's, it's an interesting development. A lot of people don't even like him as a tackle. A lot of people actually want him to be a guard. So I find that curious. We'll just say that.
It's a little bit interesting. A little bit. So we talked about a lot of the top teams that, we don't know what the hell they're going to do. It's going to have a domino effect on this entire first round. So do we want to talk about the Steelers and what the hell they could
Always.
possibly be doing at 21? Because I posted a YouTube video about it. You said when we had our little pre-production meeting before we started going, you're like, I want to disagree with one of your takes in a video you put out. Please go ahead and do that because there is a very finite there's something I want the Steelers to do. And I'm very worried that they're not going to do it. And it may not be all their fault. I don't even think I said that in the video. Maybe I should have. Because of the draft class as a whole, they may have to reach for something that is in a position of need because there's just not anybody in that range available. And someone else may make a lot more sense for them. So go ahead. I'll let you have the floor.
All right. I want to couch this by saying I'm just like, I'm not necessarily advocating for any particular decisions to be made as the correct quote unquote decisions. I'm just someone who has watched pretty much every draft since 2004. And especially with our Steelers, I just feel like I have a pretty good feel for them, even though this year's a little different with the new head coach. And I see a situation where everybody sees Jordan Tyson falling because of his injury concerns and that he's there at 21 and that the Steelers go another way. And I know that'll upset a lot of fans, especially because, I also want to clarify that I have been one of the lead cheerleaders of Jordan Tyson as actual wide receiver 1 in this class, if he can just stay healthy since day one. We've had that discussion. Big Jordan Tyson fan. I would not be mad at the Steelers, however, if we get to 21 and they go, that's just too risky a pick. It's just too risky. I don't agree necessarily with a lot of the narratives that have been thrown out in recent days about his toughness. I find those comments to be silly because I think he's a very hard nosed player who, well, yes, I think he's more of a finesse style receiver when you talk about route running being his primary skill set. And you talk about, is he a great blocker? Maybe not the best, but I don't think he's an unwilling blocker. And I think, we saw him take some strides, especially with Hines Ward as his coach. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit and blame a team if they're like, f- head coach's first pick with the team. Do we really want to spend that on a guy who has struggled to stay on the field? So give me your takes on Jordan Tyson.
I would be absolutely livid if we get to 21. If he somehow makes it all the way to 21 and the Steelers don't take him, because for now, this is year 3 of them not really having a solidified solution at wide receiver 2. They got Michael Pittman Jr. for absolutely nothing. And I think that's fine. That's low risk, all right reward. That's what I keep saying about Michael Pittman. I don't think it's like gonna change the offense or anything. That's not what Michael Pittman is. They need somebody who is kind of a target hog, somebody who is, versatile, possesses a little bit of, run after the catch ability. I guess DK does that, but you know what I mean. Tyson can do everything that they need. I think it makes too much sense. I think, again, I've said this, I think I've said this before on this podcast, and if I haven't, let me say it. There's something to be said about Mike McCarthy and his ability to develop receivers. I think it's underrated. I think it's a little bit underrated. Molded Devontae Adams into a pretty good guy, although maybe the crowd that's like, oh, let's just wait to round 2 or 3 to get a receiver. Maybe that's what you say. Maybe that's your counterpoint to me. To which I say, if your guy's there at 21, that if he can stay on the field, he's the best receiver in this draft class. To
I just
many
want to
people, even your opinion. So I would be livid if he got to 21 and the Steelers don't take him for like an edge rusher or an offensive lineman. That would drive me up a wall. And I think deservedly so. I think people would have a right to be pissed because they do all this talk and all these moves of going all in and they're just playing it safe. It'd be a risky pick. You want to win, take a fucking risk. That's my thoughts on
I
that.
mean, I think there's some other risks they could take that would be just as interesting. I do want to, I put a little pin in one of your points you just made. Let's talk about wide receivers and Mike McCarthy. I did just put an article out today on Behind Steel Curtain where I observed all the first and second round picks of Mike McCarthy's entire career. Obviously, he's the head coach and he's not the number one deciding factor in every draft pick ever made, especially in places like Green Bay and Dallas, which have very
Yeah.
publicly established systems that they do with their scouting and whatever. Also, a little bit of noticing Mike saying the exact same thing. There was a quote the other day where he was at some meetings and he said he's more involved than he's ever been in the draft process this year. Guess what he said year one in Dallas? I'm more involved than I was ever in a Green Bay. So I think Mike McCarthy's a little bit of a used car salesman. But when we talk about those wide
Perfect.
receivers, when you talk about who are the wide receivers that Mike McCarthy has developed, you think, if we're starting it chronologically, you think Jordy Nelson, second round pick, Devontae Adams, second round pick, Randall Cobb, second round pick. The only guy that's been a first round pick as a wide receiver for Mike McCarthy was CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb is not a guy that I think Mike McCarthy developed. CeeDee Lamb was
Yeah.
arguably
CeeDee
one of
Lamb
the top
was
wide receiver prospects of the past 10, 20 years. He's not the top, but nobody was sitting here fretting about CeeDee Lamb and if he could develop. He was about as safe of a wide receiver pick as you could make in the first round, at least in my opinion. So I don't know. It always comes down to this thing where it's like, first off, organizationally, Steelers and the Packers are very simpatico in that they just don't take first round wide receivers. You know who the last first round wide receiver the Steelers took was, right?
believe it had to have been Santonio, right? Had to
Correct.
have been.
Antonio Holmes. They've taken a wide receiver with their first pick in the second, when they didn't have first round picks, like
Chase
they did
Claypool.
when they took Chase Claypool, who we turned into Joey Porter Jr. But it's just it's a thing they don't do very often. And I think you'd have to go back to Plaxico before San Antonio was the last time they took a guy in the first. And the other thing I always look at is like, okay, we know that there's always more quality wide receivers, especially in the 7-on-7 high school evolution era post that we are in now. There's always more wide receivers. And I'm not saying they need to get out of like, I still want them to take two receivers in this draft. And God damn it, I want one of them to be in the second round, probably more likely, like, especially if they use one of those picks to trade back up. I just think when you think about it, it's like, do you want a guy who could get hurt in the first round and a lesser prospect at another position of need in the second? Or would you like to take someone of another position of need really high, whether that's Chris Johnson at quarterback, whether that's Emmanuel McNeil Warren at safety, whether that's another one we'll get to? I don't really want it in the first either, but people humming about we don't need an edge. I'm like, I think there's arguments to make why you should be preparing for the future at edge for Pittsburgh, at least on the first 2 days. Like, I wouldn't be shocked by it. And if I told you you could come back in the second and still get like Jeremy Bernard or, a who's another good second rounder. Personally, I think Denzel Boston I would love in the second. He's maybe trending towards being a first rounder. I've heard, I can't remember if it was Brugler or somebody else. I was hearing somebody today say that they wouldn't be shocked if he was wide receiver 3 in this class in terms of just where he gets drafted. And I see it. I see it. He gives something to, if you talk about him in Pittsburgh's lens, I think he actually would be not that strange of a pick because one, doubling down on size, you'd have 3 jumbo wide receivers, which I think the Steelers really like big. And I think Mike McCarthy, Big Mike, has always liked big. So like it wouldn't shock me, especially if he wants to run 11 like he's used to, but not substitute out any of the strength in the run game. Like that's 3 wide receivers where if you had DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., and Denzel Boston out in an 11 personnel set, you're not fretting that you're going to be suddenly worse at running, especially if you consider that Pat Freiermuth isn't really that good of a blocker anyway. So I just see scenarios. And I think people, when they talk about Michael Pittman Jr., don't give him the credit for being as movable as he is. And if this was the scenario, if they went with Denzel Boston, how I would see it is an 11 personnel. You would put Denzel Boston would have the versatility to be your X or to
Yep.
be a power slot. DK Metcalf could be your X or your Z because I think really he's got the body of an X, but he plays best as a Z. And then you have Michael Pittman Jr., who I think you could put in all 3 positions, but I honestly think his best position is in the slot. So I think that gives you 3 jumbo guys you could move around. And while I don't really like Denzel Boston at 21, and I do really think that if the Steelers can trade back while staying in the first round, I'm increasingly, I already liked that idea, and I'm usually a big, like, I would love to trade back guy anyway. But as we get closer and closer, and we're looking at the usual indicators of the guys that they would draft, first round guys that they bring in for top 30 visits, and typically in like the second week of April, all the guys that they've listed are guys we're seeing kind of in the first round, but after 21. So I'm just like, is Omar cooking up a trade back? Could he finesse a 2027 high first or second pick from a trade back? Could he finesse more day 2 picks this year out of a trade back? I wouldn't hate it.
That's an interesting point. That's kind of a good segue into one of the things I wanted to bring up for the Steelers specifically. We know 20 of their 30 top 30 visits. They have a couple of guys like, Kyle Lewis, who are local visits, don't count against the top 30.
Thinking
But
the Penn State guy, the Louisiana
yeah,
linebacker.
but out of the 20 guys, I look at that list and I'm like, there's 2, maybe 3 of these guys that I consider possible first rounders. And it's the 3 guys, ironically, that Ryan mentioned in last episode. So do you want to talk about this? I'll just say this before I let you have the floor with these guys. I'm a little bit concerned. You know, last episode we were like, whatever. They have time. They're gonna invite these guys. I know they have 10 left. I'm, I'm, I was this much worried last episode. Now I'm like, I'm a little bit more worried. I
I
can't lie.
I mean, you know, I here's what I'll say. We talked about one of the three just now in Denzel Boston. I've just had this gut feeling for basically since the middle of March. The three guys that I just like feel in my bones are Steelers type players who they could potentially try to target were Denzel Boston, because I was looking at him and I'm like, what do they not really have? A true X, big guy. I could see it. Uh, One of my favorite safety prospects, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. This is the second year in a row they've been doing heavy safety research, it seems, with their, who they've talked to at the combine, who they're bringing in for visits. And I will say, like, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he might not be a necessary need this year per se, but you don't really have anybody at safety locked up long term. You've got Deshaun Elliott who could come back next year, but you could also cut him and only take a 2 million dead cap after 2026. And he's already had some injury concerns. He got shut down pretty early last season. There's always just concerns with that, right? And he's kind of a smaller guy, so maybe you're worried about durability. Uh, Jaquan Brisker. Love Jaquan Brisker. Been a huge Jaquan Brisker fan. Loved him coming out as a rookie prospect. The concussions scare people. There's a reason why he was able to be only a 1-year deal and so cheap for Pittsburgh. His concussion history scares teams. And he plays a position where pretty easy to pick another one up. So that's always a concern. He's only a short-term value. Jalen Ramsey, I think they really, really want to make him work as a nickel corner. I think that's where they think he fits best. I think that makes sense because he's good against the run and he is just better near the line of scrimmage at this point. He's not really a roaming safety. He's not really an outside corner at best anymore either. So I think nickel is where they really want to try to force him. So I don't know if I even count him as a safety. And then beyond that, it's like you've got what? You've got the undrafted Sebastian Castro, and then not really anything else of note. So you don't have anything long term. And the draft is just as much about planning for future years and future money finagling that you have to do as it is about your immediate needs this year. Especially in a draft like this, where you're kind of like, I don't know. We don't really have to force a pick anywhere. There isn't any really like elite. So like some people hate that, but I think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is a guy who forces a lot of turnovers. He's a fumble forcing machine that fits the Steelers' turnover ethos. And you can play him in nickel. You can play him at sub package linebacker. You can play him as a split safety. If you really need to, you could drop him and be a deep safety. Don't think that's his best role, but he could play it kind of like Brisker. So I see that. And then the other guy, I know you love him too, is Chris Johnson, who I think I've also heard somebody this week. I think I was McShay or somebody was saying, "Don't be surprised if he's the third corner," and that really perked my ears up because you wrote the article last week about how his favorite cornerback was Ike Taylor,
Yeah.
and he's already done the visit with the Steelers. He was their first round considered quality talent to come and do a 30 visit. So would it be that crazy to because they picked up Dean, but Dean they've structured his contract in a way that if his injury history rears its head again this year, they can get out fairly cheaply. He's basically got a 1-year deal with team control for 2 more years, um, if everything works out fine. And they don't have a lot long term locked up at corner either. They haven't extended JPJ yet. Ramsey, we already discussed. I mean, Brandon Eccles is not a guy that I'm not drafting players because of. Dante Kent is a mystery. Asante Samuel Jr. injury questions. We only signed him for a year. Corey Trice Jr. I really like the talent.
Corey
Hasn't been able to stay on the
Trice.
field.
Is Corey Trice? Yeah, he's still on the team.
He's still on the team, but
there's such a huge Corey Trice fan base out there that like when you're talking about the Steelers defensive back room, they're like, oh yeah, we have Corey Trice too. We have hella depth. Corey Trice.
can't count on him.
Had to
Like
mention
him as a
him.
player, the few snaps he's been able to be out there on the field, he had that great interception in the end zone against Denver, I think it was 2 years ago. But like he just he's it's unfortunate. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. So you're not really counting on him. So I don't know. You mentioned they got 10 more visits that they could schedule and announce. The way I look at it, all the tackles that they've brought in are guys that I picture as like day 3 guys. So I'm less and less inclined to believe that they'll take a tackle unless they're just really playing it close to the vest. But I've been watching who these final 10 picks are. Like if they bring in a tackle, if they bring in an edge rusher, then suddenly those guys are interesting. Jordan Tyson is a guy where if they are serious about him, you would imagine that they would bring him in. No, that's what they've always done. I don't think that that was a just Mike Tomlin thing, especially since the 3 in a row came under Omar's watch. So I feel like that's certainly an Omar thing. So I don't know. It could be a lot of different things, but the 3 guys I highlighted, Chris Johnson, Denzel Boston, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, they've checked all the boxes so far in terms of what the
I,
Steelers typically do.
I mean, literally all these guys are day 3 guys. I mean, Skylar Bell's probably a day 2 guy.
Maybe.
Jacoby Thomas, Jack Kelly's day 3. Daryl
Jack
Jackson
Kelly,
Jr. day
I was
3.
so happy when Jack Kelly got announced. Jack Kelly is one of my guys. They've put a lot of guys that are on my gems list, so you should go check that out on Behind the Steel Curtain. I do a gems list every year. Markel Bell, Jack Kelly. There's a few others that they've brought in. Jack Kelly, I like a lot, especially if you want a potential like edge player, but you don't want to spend high on one. Go watch some Jack Kelly tape. It's fun stuff.
Our guy Taylon Green, the GOAT, Travis Burke. He's really interesting too. Travis Burke,
No,
he
my
has 15 visits lined up. I'm sure there are a lot of people that have that many visits,
who
but
knew that people
for
would find a 6'9" tackle intriguing?
yeah, I know. It's a wild concept. Harold Perkins, day 3. Takario Davis is most likely a day 3 guy. Jacob Rodriguez. Ooh,
Jacob
I'm very
Rodriguez was a
excited.
fun one, right? That was cool to
That'd be
see.
awesome. And then
Kyle Lewis, another one of our guys.
Kalen Rutledge too. That one is
That was another
intriguing.
one. That was another one perked me up a little bit.
And I think this was again McShay. He's like, oh, don't be surprised if Rutledge is a guy that could sneak into the first round because of the versatility, especially because at the end of the first round, like we said, we have no idea what the hell any of these teams are doing but Las Vegas. So I don't know. Interesting there. Cole Payton, James Thompson, day 3 guys. Carson Beck is more likely than not a day 3 guy, maybe day 2. I don't know who. Maybe he gets
It's
pushed up
clear
into
they're
day
looking
2.
at quarterback, right?
Yeah,
To me, when I look at them, I feel like of the ones they brought in, Taylon Green, I like. I don't know if I want to spend the pick on. I just don't know that he'll ever get it quite there. He's athletic, and I'd love to bring him in to see if he could be like some sort of offensive weapon if you're spending a very late pick on him. But the guy to me is Cole Payton. I like him. I just feel like I like what he brings a little more than Carson Beck.
fair. Completely fair. Then it's Kendrick Law, Jeff Caldwell, a couple of receivers, day 3 guys. Markel Bell from the Gems list, and Espian's Prysock from Washington.
Yeah, they're looking at these long corners. I wish they would invite Julian Neal in. He's another one of my guys. They clearly like the long, lengthy guys, but I heard I forget who said it, but I heard somebody comparing them to being like a air carrier ship where it's like they're big, but it sure takes them a long time to ramp up and turn and move laterally. And I kind of feel that way about both of those guys. I would much rather have a lengthy guy like Neil who can make those, horizontal cuts little quicker, mirror a little better. Uh, I know people are intrigued by the length, but sometimes we get we take the wrong lessons and we're intrigued by the wrong traits. Like those are traits that you like, but can they move? Can they play
Yeah.
corner well? And I don't know about that with the UW guys.
So let's get into the beast. Want to talk about some observations. I have barely scratched the surface on this thing. If you aren't subscribed to The Athletic, it's worth it just for this piece alone. Dane Brugler, I believe it's advertises over 300,000 words of draft content, profiles on pretty much every single player you could ever imagine.
2,000 prospects or something. It's an institution. It's crazy.
It's wild. So I want to just give a couple observations, just quick looks off of this list. And keep in mind, he's very plugged in. He talks to a lot of people, talks to a lot of GMs and insiders and things like that. He gets feedback on all of this. And I think that these are pretty interesting notes just as a whole. Garrett Nussmeier, QB3, Drew Aller, QB4 for him. Any disagreements there?
Uh,
Aller's
not
kind of
really.
a hot button
Not
topic.
really. I think, we've discussed quarterbacks a little bit. I think we agree Mendoza 1, Simpson 2. I would probably put Nuss 3. If for our Steelers fans, I don't really think he fits us that well. But I wouldn't argue with anybody putting Nuss at 2 or 3 in this class. Um, the 2024 tape was obviously a lot more impressive than what we saw this year. Aller, I don't put it for personally. I don't there's people that are uh, you know, really in his camp who really want to see him be a day 2 selection. I'm kind of in the place where if that happens, I guess I won't be surprised per se, but I just have a hard time seeing it. I feel like we've seen more talented passers fall to day 3 in recent years than him. I just feel like people just really want him to be a thing. They really want fetch to happen, and I don't see it. I just don't. And I am somebody who was turned on to him pretty early. Really wanted to see him. I think I took him even in a campus to campus or campus to Canton style league. So I really wanted him to work out, but it just felt like he took a step forward in 24, but it still wasn't quite where you wanted it to be. And then he just took a massive step back in 25 and then got hurt on top of it. So to me, I don't see him being a day 2 pick, but that's just my preference.
I agree. So the wide receiver rankings I thought were pretty interesting. And this is kind of a good segue into, oh, how many receivers are going to go in the first round? Well, let's start off with the top 5 here. Carnell Tate, wide receiver 1. And I think that one thing that I can take away from at least the last week with, it's going to be a murky draft up until, the picks are being made. Carnell Tate is the wide receiver 1 I think has become pretty set in stone. And I think
Right.
that's important to note just because you're more of a Jordan Tyson guy. I've been a Mekhi Lemon guy. And we haven't been talking about Carnell Tate as much as we probably should have. I have no issue with that, but it seems like he, in most people's minds, is the wide receiver 1. He's going to be the first receiver off the board, most likely in the top 10. At number 2, he has Mekhi Lemon. And then Jordan Tyson at 3. And I just think that it's a little bit interesting, a little bit noteworthy that he is number 3 after the reports that we've seen this week, the narrative of, oh, he's not a competitor, which I don't. I think it's bullshit, to be completely honest with you. But it is interesting that the most, one of the more plugged in draft analysts has Jordan Tyson at number 3. And I feel like we keep saying it every time. If you're in analytics, he's the analytical guy in this wide receiver class. He's the guy that has all of the advanced numbers that you want. He can't stay on the field, obviously. He's still dealing with that hamstring injury from November. Yes, it is. It's April when we're recording this, so that's still there. And then number 4, let me ask you this: who's your wide receiver 4? Just off the top of your head.
Um, it's like it's neck and neck for me between I personally I think flavor wise would take Cooper, but if someone wants to say Denzel Boston's 4, and I know there's people that are gonna say Casey Concepcion, I don't have him there. I have him 5 or 6, but who's Dane got? I haven't cracked into the beast yet.
You had it. Casey Concepcion, number 4, ahead of Omar Cooper, who I one of my biggest takeaways from the combine was everybody's in love with Omar Cooper. Everybody's in love with what he can do after the catch. I think that he's going to be around one guy. Now, Casey Concepcion, who I do like a good bit too. Again, if the Steelers are able to trade up and snag one of these guys in like the early second, I'd be all over that. I'd be very happy with that. But I thought it was a little bit interesting that Concepcion got the nod over Omar Cooper, over Denzel Boston, because I've seen very few people willing to give that kind of ranking to
I think I
Concepcion.
think, uh, I think I saw, like, Mina Kimes at him at 3 or 4, so I've seen it, and I know there's a lot of people out there that really, really like him. I think the thing with him from me that I see why people like is he does separate at a pretty great level. I do think he's got that going for him. I think the hands are an issue, and I think the size is an issue against some of the other guys I would maybe put a little ahead of him. I don't think Casey Concepcion's a bad player. I get the hype. It's not like it's outrageous to me. I knock him a little bit because of some of the laps, and he's got like 19 drops. So, that's I think you got to penalize a guy a little bit for something like that, especially when they're an undersized receiver. Um, I think he's a first year all pro special team return guy, no doubt. And I think that he could work himself into being a pretty good wide receiver too for a team. If he could get his hands a little more solid, I could see him being an under 6 foot explosive type of player. I he's just the type of guy that to me, when I look at his profile, I'm much happier taking him in the second than I am in the first.
I don't disagree. But this is
And
just
I
the
would probably take
beast. It's
Boston
the
over him.
beast. I disagree.
I
I
I
disagree.
would take Boston. I just think Boston's smoother as a route runner than people give him credit for, and I just think he's gonna be one of those guys that runs a 4.6, but he puts up 1,100 yards every year. 8 touchdowns is like his floor every year, maybe 6 to 8 is his floor every year. I blocks for you. I mean, want to talk about punt returners? Denzel Boston was returning punts for Washington. You
yeah.
know, there's a chance he's N'Keal Harry. I just don't. I just think he's better than that.
There's always a chance to be N'Keal Harry. And that's a scary thought. That is. Especially, you know where N'Keal Harry went to college, little Arizona State,
Arizona State.
Jordan
I know very
Tyson.
well. I was
Mm.
duped by N'Keal Harry. I was big on him that year. Do feel like he went to the absolute worst team,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
but I mean, Bill Belichick is an all-time great. Developing wide receivers was not something he was good at. And
They
our poor guy, N'Keal Harry, he just never recovered from his tough start.
the same man who brought you Sony Michel in the first round brought you N'Keal
Cole
Harry.
Strange.
Cole Strange, Chattanooga in the first round. I don't know that we'll ever see that again. Linebacker rankings were a little bit interesting to me. CJ Allen was not the second ranked linebacker on the board.
How far did
It
you have
was
him down?
He had him at 3, but
Okay.
Jacob Rodriguez was up at number 2.
Really?
I
Okay.
like it. I like it. I was very happy
Not
to
mad
see
at
it.
it. I do
Uh,
think CJ Allen is the safer pick. I think, defending the run isn't sexy. And I think that CJ Allen, when you take his size, his intelligence, how he commands a defense, I do think that gives him a little bit of a safer floor. But if you are enamored by Jacob Rodriguez, I mean, who among us?
yeah. So corners were about what I expected, honestly. Mansour Delane was 1, Jermod
Yeah.
McCoy 2, Chris Johnson was up at number 3.
Ooh,
I
he's got
like
him
it.
for 3, huh? All right.
And
According to
Jermod
Steelers fans,
McCoy,
he's not a first round talent. So,
I think Chris Johnson's a first round talent. PSA to everybody.
Johnson, like, at bare minimum, if he doesn't go to Seahawks at 32, if they stay pat and don't trade back, which I think they could easily do with 4 picks in this draft. But I like Chris Johnson a lot. If you're into Colton Hood, I get that. If you're into Brandon Cisse, I get that. There's a lot of really intriguing corners, so I get it if he's not your third. I just think he's as clean of a prospect from a small school as you can find, and you know how we've been on. We went to the Senior Bowl. We were excited to see him there. I think he lived up to expectations. Fun guy. Might be a
Yep.
Steeler. Loves Zach Taylor.
Maybe. You know what? I think Jermod McCoy has been getting a lot of love recently. Like,
Everyone
I've seen
exhaled
him
after that pro
going.
day, huh? It just
I
feels like
know.
everyone was so worried, and then he does
Everyone's
the
back
pro day, and
on.
everyone's like, "It's good now. It's fine."
Everything's good. And I get it because, he's the Jordan Tyson. He was hurt this past year, but his 2024 tip, you're like, holy shit, this guy's the best player in the draft. He's like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, he's impressive if he's healthy, and
I was
didn't participate in the
watching
combine either, which is also why people were starting to worry. But
I was watching just a little bit of Jermod McCoy because I haven't, just watching some 2024 tape. And I watched that game against Ohio State, which is
mm,
probably unfair because they had a Mecca Buka, Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate running around. So it wasn't McCoy's best game. Made some solid plays, but my takeaway from that mainly was Jeremiah Smith is like
he's that guy, yeah.
he's so good. He will be the best player in 2027. It's not close. I know everybody arch it is Jeremiah Smith, bar none, gap. Like large tier. That's all I have to say.
He
Jeremiah
might not
Smith,
be the
friend of the
number one overall pick, but I mean, if you're looking,
I think he should
I think
be.
4 has been the highest in recent years that a receiver has gone, and if memory serves, I think
Yeah.
because like Neighbors was at 4. Where did was Chase at 4, or where did he get picked? He was the other guy who got drafted really high.
Chase was like 4 or 5, I want to
He was
say.
somewhere in that range. So, like, especially if some of the quarterbacks that are expected to come out next year, uh, I wouldn't be shocked if Jeremiah Smith isn't the number one overall pick, even though he's probably going to be on top of everybody's board.
And our guy Davison Igbinosin at
Mhm.
number 10 on the corners, cracking the top 10. Proud of him.
Love to see it. He was one that has been
Hopefully he gets
interesting
to go.
because I liked him when he was a little secret. I don't know that I love him as a second round pick per se. I feel like maybe we got a little over our skis as a community pumping him up. I liked him a lot as a day 2 guy, but I think 10 is fair. I think 10 makes sense.
Yeah. So those are my notes from the beast. Ryan, any closing thoughts on our episode here?
Yeah. You know, I just think that a couple interesting things that I'm looking at is one, how many wide receivers are actually going to go in the first? I feel like there's 3 no-brainers. I think like now I'm settling in at like it might be 5 guys. Theoretically could
Really?
be up theoretically could be up to 6 because I mean, I think if you talk about it, it's the 3 we talked about. It's Denzel Boston, it's Omar Cooper Jr., it's Casey Concepcion. I don't see anybody beyond those 3. But if those 3 and the other 3, so that's our ceiling is 6, it seems. I don't know that we'll actually get to that number. I'm curious to see. That's one of the biggest questions for me. We were just talking about cornerbacks. I think when the cornerbacks start going, there's going to be a run. My question is, does that happen in the 20s or does that happen in like the 30s after in round 2? Because I think we're going to just start seeing them all fly off the barn all at once. I'm curious with the tackles because I think that's going to happen too. That's really going to influence the wide receivers and cornerbacks because like tackle tax is true. It always happens. I, I feel like we're going to see, you know, Maui Noah. We're gonna see Fano. We're gonna see uh Monroe Freeling. I honestly think we're gonna see Max Ahinakor. Some people still don't have him in the first. I think that that's gonna be to me that's been a lock since Senior Bowl. He's going in the first. Blake Miller is getting pushed up boards, and then you've got guys like Lamu. Could we see 6? Are we going to see 6 tackles in the first? Are we going to see even more? Who's to say? Uh, the guard thing is interesting. I think we'll obviously see Ione. Uh, I know a lot of Steelers fans are starting to warm up the idea of getting him. I just don't see him getting past Baltimore at 4. He just screams Raven to me. So I'm just stealing my heart for him not to be available. Um, there's been talk about if, like Ratledge gets up there. I think Pregnon's probably the second guy. And then maybe
Yeah.
Ryland turned us on to Keelan pretty early, and I'm now on board for him being a second rounder. I could see someone like New England maybe reaching for him at the end of the first, but I think with both him and Besantis, I would be much more comfortable with them in the second than in the first. So just kind of curious where that's all going to stack, and then Edge is also curious because I think that's another really deep group, and I'm just curious to see when they start flying off the board, and you know one of my draft crushes this year is out of Illinois is Gabe Yakis or Akis. I've heard Yakis, I've heard Akis. I'm not sure which one's the correct one. love to see him in the black and gold, but I don't know if that'll actually happen. I know a lot of people, like yourself included, would be mad to see a day two pick spent on an edge. I think with Watt being hurt and older, Highsmith always being hurt, and like I'm increasingly just starting to think that they're not going to retain Herbig.
Oh my god, dude! Don't even get me
I
started
mean,
on
I'm
that.
worried about it. Like I want to lock him down, but I don't know. They don't typically do extensions till after the draft, so there's still time for that to happen. But there's buzz. Pete Schrager, he talked about it. I don't want it to be the Clemson guy. I don't want it to be TJ Parker, but I would not be shocked if a day two pick is spent on an edge. It's a really good edge class, and if they're looking at the future, I could see
I
it.
don't know.
And that's kind of
They
my
have
last.
12 picks.
They got 12 picks. I think they make them. I think they make majority of them. Some people think they're going to get under 10 and trade up, and they very well could. But my feeling right now is that they're going to make double digit picks at minimum.
If Jordan Tyson's on the board at 21 and they don't take it,
Just
we're gonna
remember I
have to
told you
have
first.
like,
Just remember I told you
oh
first.
my god,
Let's just pause though. Let's just pause just one more time. Let's do last little bit of draft counseling, a little bit of
I'm
draft
pausing.
therapy here. I know you're going to be upset regardless. It doesn't matter. We know that you're going to be upset if they pass on Jordan Tyson and he's there at 21. How good would you feel, or how much up to it would it make you if it was Chris Johnson?
It would be. I'd be happy that they got a quality player, but I just argue that I know that like the way they've structured the contracts of Dean, they don't necessarily have anybody locked up long term
Mhm.
in the
What if
corner room.
what if okay, I'll up the ante. What if they got Chris Johnson and then they got Jacob Rodriguez?
That'd be really good. I would like
You'd
that.
be okay with
I
it?
if they if so I thought you were gonna say like, oh, there's gonna be like 4 receivers that go in the first round. And like, let's say for the sake of the argument, Omar Cooper falls out of the first round or Casey Concepcion falls out of the first round. If they're able to get like a Chris Johnson and then like a Concepcion, you know, via trade up, I would love that.
Yeah.
I think that would be phenomenal. If that's what they end up doing, that would make up for them not I don't know if it would make up for not
What
taking
I really,
Tyson
really
because
want,
I have Tyson.
what I really
I
want is them to take. I would love a trade back, but even if they don't, I would love a Chris Johnson. I would love a trade up in the second to get 2 seconds. And I would love if they came away with a Jacob Rodriguez linebacker, but if they also made sure they got their wide receiver and got like a Jeremy Bernard, and then followed it up on like day 3 with like one of like Hurst, Lance, Stribling, McAllister, one of those types.
that'd be fun. I could be
That'd be
talked.
fun.
I could be talked
We
into
can
it.
make Jordan Tyson in the aggregate.
We'll just replace him, and he gets on base. He
and
gets on
and
base.
and that first Jeremy Bernard knocking a DB on his ass in a run block, that would hit. That would hit really well.
That would be good. But still, that would suck to pass up on Jordan Tyson
I
because
get it. I get it. I love
I
Tyson.
know if they pass on him, he's going to become the best receiver in the league. I
Oh,
know,
if
and
he
he's
went to
going to
like,
magically be
if he went
healthy
to
all the
division
time.
rival or something too.
Yep. Yep. He's going to go to Cleveland or something with their late
That's
first.
the one that I'm most worried about is one, I just think Ione's going to Baltimore. And then if Omar Cooper, I see him so frequently mocked with the Browns' second pick. And if he went there, I would weep for days. I would be so sad.
That would suck. That would really suck. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We're in the home stretch, guys. Less than 2 weeks until the NFL draft. If you're going to be there, let us know in the comments down below. We'll be back next week with a very special guest. Am I allowed to announce that?
I don't see why not.
We'll have a special guest joining us, a little 3-person podcast to give you everything to get ready for the NFL draft. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff. We love you guys, and we thank you for listening. And we'll be back very soon, same time, same place, right here
Be
on
drafted.
Trust the Board.